Hans Niemann is one of the most controversial players on the chess circuit. However, we all know that he's capable of playing some amazing positional chess. In today's video, we're going to take a look at a game of his against the legend himself, Vasily Ivanchuk, played just yesterday at the Turnier Mira. White started out with e4, and after some well-known theory in the Petrov, we reached quite a harmless position, at least according to theoretical standards. We have quite a symmetrical position, but we still have some imbalances. So firstly, black has this sort of annoying pin along the diagonal, and there is this asymmetry of this knight on f3, which is currently pinned but can have perhaps a bright future, and this knight on c6, which isn't the best piece, and black would love to try to improve it. And I think Hans solved these problems very well. So firstly, if white plays queen c2, I think this would be a mistake, because here black could take on f3. And yeah, bishop h7 would be extremely embarrassing, as now the bishop gets trapped. So white has to take on f3, but after g6, his structure is sort of destroyed, and black has a good position. So Hans played the move g3, and his idea is after queen d7, king g2, he's ready to play queen c2 and recapture on f3 with the king. So black plays bishop g6 and bishop f4 and exchange the bishops, and also the other pair of bishops. So here, obviously black has managed to simplify a lot, but white still has a slight initiative as his knight is slightly more active. And Hans uses this to great effect. He first starts with the move h4, and this is a very typical move, especially given the fact that white has a knight on g5. The idea is not so much to go for an attack, but it's more about provoking a weakness on the king side, which was a very successful strategy in this game. Black played knight d8, trying to improve this badly placed knight on c6, and Hans continued with h5. Knight e6, and obviously Hans is not going to trade the knights. c6, rook h1. Now white's hinting at perhaps opening the h file at the right moment. So Ivanchuk understandably plays g5. But this has now created a weakness on f5. Now for knight e5 h6, Hans spent more than half of his time here, but found a very nice series of moves. In fact, these were the best moves, leading to a huge positional advantage. He first played queen f5, exploiting the weak square on f5. The queen here is very strong, and white has threats like knight g4 followed by queen f6, which would be lights out if he could get that. So black is forced to play knight g7, hitting the queen, and now white comes in, queen d7. A surprising move, going for a queen trade. But Hans has correctly evaluated that in this endgame, he will have a continuing initiative and will be able to attack black's weaknesses. So black's forced to take on e1, and now a very strong intermediate move, knight f6 check, forcing the king to the corner, and now white recaptures on e1. The position is obviously very nice for white, but material is quite limited, so it feels like black should have pretty good drawing chances. But now Hans starts to play like an absolute genius. Rook e5, improving his rook. a5. And now white's pieces seem very active, but they're really not attacking anything. And so Hans finds an excellent regrouping. He first brings the knight back to g4, hitting the pawn on h6. And after king h7, rook f5, threatening rook f6, winning the pawn on h6. So black was forced to play king g7, rook f6 hits the pawn on h6 and forces rook h8 to defend the pawn. And we can see that after this regrouping, white's pieces are absolutely perfectly placed, and the black pieces have been condemned to passivity. Hans now plays the move a4, and after b6, which I think is a big mistake, as it now weakens the pawn on c6, here Hans finds a really nice move to exploit the weakness that was newly created. He plays the move f4. So he's ready to kick the knight away with f5, after which the pawn on c6 will come under fire from the rook. Black is forced to take on f4. And now after rook c8, black lost very quickly. The only chance was to play the move b5. But this is still quite bad for black. After f5, knight f4 check, king f3, knight takes h5, white continues with rook takes c6. And the engine might think this is sort of okay, but as we go down the line, everything will become clear. After b takes a4, an important move, f6 check. And the idea of this move is that after king h7, rook c5, rook b8, black would love to take on b2 and liquidate the a5 and a4 pawns. But white takes on d5, hitting the knight on h5. And that was why it was so important to play the pawns to f6, so that the rook is now gaining a tempo on the knight. So black has no time to take on b2. For instance, after king g6, white continues with knight e5 check, king f6, and now an accurate move, knight c6, hitting the rook. And another important point is after rook b6, now we take the knight, and there will be a nice shish kebab, winning the rook on c6. In the game, black played move rook c8, which did not offer much resistance. So obviously white can't take on h6 immediately because the f4 pawn would hang, but that issue is easily resolved with the inclusion of f5. And now with knight f4 check, the knight actually does get trapped. And that's going to be game over. For instance, if rook h8, white can simply take on c6, and the knight on h5 remains stranded, and white will easily pick up this pawn and win the game. After the move knight g5, the game did not last very long. White takes on h6, winning a pawn and retaining all of his advantages. Knight e4, and now white simply brings his king in. Black is pretty hopeless. King f4, knight d2, now rook d6. And his idea is that after knight c4, white now plays h6, king h7, rook d8. And here black resigned, because after knight takes b2, white continues with the move king g5, and it's absolutely impossible to stop the move knight f6. This was a dominating performance by the young American. Suffice to say, his chess spoke for itself in this game. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more game reviews, and make sure to like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.